What's up, everyone? Good morning and welcome to Shaw Locals Bears Insiders podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond, and appreciate you guys hanging in with us this morning. We are trying to figure out a tech issue to get things going this morning. Finally got that solved, Sean. Good to be with you, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Last week of the season here, Kyle.
Yeah,
At least if you're the Bears. Some other teams are going to keep playing, but for us, it's last week.
After the last couple of weeks of seeing where the Bears are, I think it's time to go ahead and let the 2022 season go into the record books for this Bears team, man.
Yeah, I think we're all ready to move on from this season and just wash our hands of it and move on and start talking about next year and what the Bears can do to improve this team.
I'll admit, I tend to get a bit of football fatigue when we get into the holiday season, particularly coming out of it, just because we do this a lot for a living, whether that's at the pro level all the way going back to high school, since pretty much when training camp kicks off. So with it's I've been able to ward that off longer than usual because the Bears, despite the fact that they stink like they typically do, they've at least had interesting storyline. That's kind of fallen apart. Here over the last couple of weeks, Sean. And to the point where I actually wasn't watching the Monday night game between Buffalo and Cincinnati because I was like, all right, it's two playoff teams. Like, I'm going to see these teams. I've already watched both of these teams a lot this year. I'm going to go ahead and take a break. And then the text messages started flowing in the other night. And I, of course, jump on and see what happened with Damar Hamlin. And, it's tough for anyone to watch. For I think anyone who does this for a living in terms of like journalism and being around anyone who's around these guys, I talk about it a lot about like humanity and remembering they're not just a name in a jersey or with a number on their jersey. That was an unfortunate reminder of just how real that is.
Yeah, every single player on the football field is a human being, and from the starting quarterback to the last guy on the bench whose name you might not even know. Like, they're all people, and that's just a really tough situation, and kind of puts a damper on the end of the season here. I mean, it's I'm sure this is not what the NFL wanted to be talking about this time of year, and it's unfortunate. I also was not watching that game from the beginning. I must have just turned it on right after this happened because I hadn't seen any Twitter notifications or anything. I flipped the game on, and they were attending to him down on the field, and the players were, that's when those shots of the players looking really shaken started to pop up on the screen, and you kind of knew almost immediately that this was not normal.
Yeah, certainly the reaction of the players. The reaction of emergency personnel when I went back and looked at it, like we both have had multiple instances over the years where we've seen pretty severe injuries and people have to be stretchered and stabilized. Even having said that, the reaction of emergency personnel in that game on Monday night, it was pretty much immediately clear that something was very, very wrong.
Yeah, it was. And you're right, Kyle. I mean, not this exact thing, but things like this do happen in the game of football. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we saw Tevin Jenkins down on the field and, unable to get up at all. They had to stabilize his neck, and we see them do that. The good thing is they do that. They're extra cautious with those types of things. And in Tevin's case, thankfully, it wasn't worse than that, and he was able to get back. Relatively quickly, and but it's easy to forget that when things like that happen, these are people, and you never want to see anybody go through something like that on the football field, or we're just playing a game here, and seeing something like that just really it is hard.
I'm glad you brought up Tevin, and it's a good pivot point back to the Bears. I wish I had something more insightful to say about the Damar Hamlin situation. I unfortunately don't.
There's been a lot of people who've said a lot of nice things.
Yeah,
on national broadcasts and whatnot.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. But kind of transitioning back to the Bears, you brought up Tevin but sticking to kind of like the humanity of it and all. It's a good place to start because we're going to talk a lot today about 2023 and what we want to see from the Bears and what we've seen from them this season in terms of building towards the future. And I'm going to drop this link in the chat because I want, if anyone here is with us on YouTube, it's popping in there. Just so you guys have a reference if you haven't seen the story. It's Sean's notebook from the game on Sunday. But I want you to take the look at the photo that is the lead, and it's Tevin Jenkins, who left that game obviously really early again and missed the rest of it. He didn't come back in, right?
No, he did not come back in,
okay,
but he did stay on the bench. He was on the bench.
That's what I said that, and then when I think about seeing him in uniform in that picture, I'm like, man, maybe he came back in and I missed it or something somehow, but I didn't think so. But the photo is of Tevin trying to essentially console a pretty upset Braxton Jones, who had a really tough game at left tackle. And it's just I thought it was a perfect encapsulation of who these guys are as human beings, because like you look at Braxton Jones, and we've talked about a lot this season. We've talked a lot this season about Braxton Jones and kind of the hidden gems or the gems of finding players. But like Braxton Jones still is he's still got an uphill battle to remain in the league. And he knows like going into 2023, like his job isn't secure. I just thought that was a really great shot. I want to give credit to who was the AP photographer? Dwayne Burleson is the guy that shot it. I thought it was a really good shot.
Yeah, it's a great photo. And, I saw that. I don't know how many of the reporters up in the press box, the game ends and people are finishing up their immediate stories. And I was just kind of scanning the field with the binoculars and saw that moment happening. Everyone, the game ends, an NFL game ends, and both teams kind of spill out onto the field, and they're high fiving, handshaking, whatever, saying hey to their buddies on the other team. And I just noticed Braxton sitting on a Gatorade bucket on the bench. He hadn't moved, and he was just kind of staring off into space. And then I saw Tevin go over there and say something to him. And these guys go through, they have a lot of challenges. And you're right, Kyle. Like Braxton Jones is a rookie who nobody expected to start at left tackle this season. I think that we can all kind of say that he has exceeded our expectations, but at the same time, he has areas of his game that he needs to work on. And yes, it was a bad game. Everybody has bad games, but sure, in the back of his mind, he could be thinking about, this is your last impression on your rookie season. And certainly the Bears are going to take a long, hard look at those tackle spots and try to figure out how they can improve this offensive line through the draft, through free agency. And, the sort of underlying storyline of that is, okay, if they bring somebody else in, someone's going to get benched. And so, no, if you're Braxton Jones, you don't want to have a bad game going into the offseason. That's kind of your last impression, and he's got another chance here. But yeah, it was a tough afternoon for him.
Yeah, Rick checking in saying Jones getting bull rushed by a 255 pound in is alarming. Yeah, there's no getting around it. Braxton Jones really struggled on Sunday, but I guess before we get into Sunday and the struggles of the offensive line, what I'll say to kind of finish that Braxton Jones thought is, it's the idea of this isn't a first round pick. This isn't even a second or third round pick. This is, a guy that we weren't expecting to be starting. And essentially, like, this is a rebuilding team. The guys know that this is a rebuilding team. They know that significant changes are coming to this roster. And Braxton Jones is like, listen, I have a chance. There's no guarantee anyone, even a first round pick, is ever going to make it to that second contract, let alone someone in Braxton Jones' position. So yeah, going into this offseason on a sour note is not good and really stressful. And it's easy to overlook that. And we talk about, I talked about fatigue and kind of burnout from the football season. And Triple R, great to have you this morning. He said that fatigue is the same. The staff and players are going through mentally checked out. So I do agree on, like, these guys do get fatigued. Like Sean,
think about Braxton too. He's never played the season this long.
Yeah.
These rookies.
Yeah, I mean, they get fatigued, but like mentally checked out, I disagree with because these guys have a lot to play for, as we were saying. Like Braxton Jones has a lot to play for. All these guys, when you are on a rebuilding club, most of these guys don't have guaranteed jobs last year. And a lot of the free agents that like the Bears brought in, Ryan Poles brought in, were on 1-year deals or deals where they can be easily cut after that first year.
Yeah, and look, when you talk to these guys too, they realize that like the product they're putting out is what they put out on the tape. That's what the coaches look for. That's what the scouts look at when they're scouting for free agency next season and whatnot. So you can't afford to have a bad game any time of year. I don't think these guys are checked out either. Now, I do think that they're, a little bit overmatched at certain positions. That was very clear in that game against Detroit. And it's I'm surprised, Kyle, that we've gotten through this 3-win season without a game like this, without a clunker. I know they got beat bad by Buffalo, but you could kind of chalk that up to a really good opponent, and the weather was funky and
Injuries. I mean,
injuries.
injuries remained an issue this past
And
week.
then it all kind of just snowballed until we got to this point where Detroit, needing a win for their playoff hopes, just rolled through them. And I was a little surprised, I guess glad as somebody who's writing up these storylines and talking about it all the time. I'm glad that we didn't have a game like this until late in the season.
Yeah, I mean it's made God, we've gone through all you Bears fans in the chat here. We've all been through this. It doesn't matter if you're a
Yeah,
fan or a
you guys know
journalist.
it.
Yeah, like you get to December football, the Bears are bad, and it's usually a really tough watch. And I mean, not even December. A lot of times in October and November is a really bad watch. And despite the fact that this team is 3-13 and probably getting in 3-14, there were a lot of things to keep you interested this season. And I think there should be optimism going into this offseason, more so than maybe it feels like after these last 2 weeks. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Oh yeah, no, I just think these last couple of weeks are going to leave a sour note. But you gotta look at the big picture, and you gotta look at what they were able to accomplish with Justin Fields this season, and don't forget what happened. You can't just let last impressions matter, but that can't be everything. You have to look at the whole picture.
Alan Dunlap checking in. Alan, great to have you, man. Bears had to use a 40-year-old at left tackle last year, talking about Jason Peters, who actually played better than any of us ever expected last year. And a 5th-round rookie this year equals indictment of the talent and organization. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying there, Alan, because like, yeah, particularly under the Ryan Pace regime, but like this is a new regime that was clearly tanking might be a strong word, but like was not investing long term right away. So like if they don't have the offensive line solidified for Justin Fields by the beginning of next season, then yeah, you can talk about it being an indictment of the organization. I struggle to draw too many conclusions from this team in terms of the outlook of Ryan Poles' future and the future of the Bears.
No, they were punting on this season from the beginning, and that's part of. You see that in playing guys like a rookie 5th-round pick at left tackle, and playing guys like Jack Sanborn, an undrafted linebacker, and a couple of young guys in your secondary. So I would also not read too much into that. Now, I do think they're going to have to address the tackle position in the offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring somebody in at left tackle and bump Braxton over to right tackle, or maybe look hard at a veteran right tackle or something like that. Then I would be concerned if they don't make any adjustments on this offensive line, and really on both sides in the trenches. We've talked all year about how bad that defensive line has been too. I'm willing to hold off my judgment of Ryan Poles and this regime until we really see what they can do with another offseason here, because they were starting from like less than zero. They were starting in the negative and having to claw their way back up.
It's weird because, like I said, they're 3-13, and I actually think, given the path that Ryan Poles chose, and anyone who's listened to this show consistently knows that I disagree with the path that Ryan Poles chose going into this season. But with that being said, with that being said, with the path he chose, I thought it's gone about as well as you could have hoped.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, your quarterback has played well, and that's you know, the most important position on the field. And does he have to show more throwing the ball? Sure. You know, obviously a lot of that was his running abilities, and he's done really, really well with that. But you just got to keep the progression going. But yeah, I mean, there's been other areas where this team was just not up to, not up to the standard. And I think Ryan Poles would be the first guy to tell you that.
there's a ton of stuff coming into the chat. There's a lot we're going to get to today. Looking forward to talking. We do got to get out of here kind of early today. Sean's got to get over to Hallis Hall. Bears are starting earlier than typically on a Wednesday. They're only doing a walkthrough today, not a practice like they normally would. They close the locker room in response to.
Kyle, we did get one other update last night. We will get a couple other players at the podium, but they will not be opening the locker room.
Okay, well that's good. I was a bit surprised when they completely shut it down, just because they had to know like there were going to be a lot of questions.
That's going to be a big focus of today, and reaction from that for sure.
I see people in the chat talking about. I know Hub was on the radio yesterday and said some stuff about Justin Fields. We will tackle that, maybe not today. I don't want to promise anything, and I still have to even talk to Sean about when our next podcast is. But I was talking with Hub on the phone last night. We are planning on Hub joining us here on the podcast. It might be Friday if we can make that work, but sometime very soon you will get to hear from Hub. You will get to hear Hub's opinion on Justin Fields, and there may even be a. I miss sparring with Hub, and I've heard Hub's take. I actually talked to him a bit about it on the phone yesterday and disagreed. So I had to bite my tongue with him on the phone yesterday. So I can't wait for him to come on, Sean, just so we can have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a conversation that steers this whole offseason, and certainly Hub has some strong opinions, as you guys are alluding to in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone who is tuned in right now, we appreciate you watching us live this morning. We usually are live twice a week. We try and go with Monday morning, Friday morning. That kind of gets messed up a little bit with our travel schedules, our holiday schedules the last couple of weeks. But typically Monday and Friday mornings at 9:30 is when we're live. You can find all of our content at shawlocal.com. You can follow us at Bears_insider, at Kyle Nabors, and at Sean_Hammond. And of course, I want to make sure to give a shout out to the sponsor of Shaw Local's Bears Insider podcast, Marengo Guns. Always buying and always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Guns, open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And there are a lot of questions in here, guys, that I want to get to. Mike B had some even before we were able to jump on the show. And that's something maybe we end with that question. It's going to actually take a bit of time to unpack and probably going to lead to a lot of other things. So maybe I'll go with that second. But before we go over there, I wanted to hit more on the offensive line. Because I do think, like you saw in that Buffalo game with both Tevin Jenkins and Cody Whitehair out, that the offensive line struggled a lot more. And then in that game against Detroit, like Justin Fields had 105, I think it was 105 rushing yards, like 9 or 10 minutes into that game.
Yeah.
I mean, within the first quarter, he had over 100 rushing yards. And I thought to myself, like, oh my God, like he's about to just break fantasy football. He's going to break the NFL today. And then Tevin Jenkins left that game again. And it's really hard to quantify it, right? Because we don't know. I mean, I can clearly the offensive line struggled more with Tevin out, but like to what extent, it's hard to tell. But I do think, considering how bad they are up front on the offensive line, Tevin Jenkins is by far their best offensive lineman, and losing him these last couple of weeks has had, well, I think at least a moderate, if not a significant impact on the way this offense has looked.
Well, yeah, Kyle, I would 100% agree with that. You're right. It's hard to quantify, but one of the only consistencies between the Eagles game, the Bills game, and this week was his absence. And yeah, you can't really put numbers to the offensive line the same way you can with receivers, with running backs. But I absolutely agree that has been a big reason why the Bears have struggled. And obviously, playing the Eagles, you're playing the Bills. Those are really good teams. You know, the Lions are in the playoff hunt, so they're certainly a good team. But I'm with you. I mean, the offense just has not looked the same without him, and for whatever reason, they haven't been able to run the ball as well. We haven't talked a whole lot about David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert these last 3 weeks. The only saving grace is that Justin can seemingly get out of any pinch and just run for his life and pick up some yards. And but again, that kind of stopped in that second half against the Lions. You're right. We saw that early, and then he wasn't able to find that same sort of running room in the second half.
And that's where it gets tough because, I don't want to completely attribute that just to Tevin Jenkins because Justin Fields, I think it was a second long run. He kind of came up a little lame. He was limping a bit after that. They were working with a massage gun.
He got hit hard on his side, on his hip or something like that. Yeah, they were working with the massage gun on the sideline too.
I wouldn't be shocked. So today will be our first injury report. Now the Bears are only doing a walkthrough, so it's tough to get anything out of it. But I wouldn't be shocked if Justin Fields shows up on the injury report with like a hip injury or a leg injury or something.
No, I wouldn't be surprised either. I don't expect. Obviously, he played the whole game, and I don't expect it would hurt his ability to play on Sunday. But you never know. I mean, the Bears don't really have any reason to put him back out on the field, Kyle. We haven't really touched on that. I think they will. I think that's the direction they want to go with this. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Poles stepped in and said, "No, just sit him."
What are you gaining at this point, right? Like you've got a large enough sample size with Justin Field. If Tevin Jenkins isn't able to go, if you're really depleted at other positions, I don't know what you're going to get out of it. Like, I think we know what Justin Fields is. We know where he is in his development this year at this point. I don't know.
We have a big sample size this year. Yes.
I don't know. Let's ask the chat.
Yeah.
Gary Connor, you gain that's pretty concise there, Gary. Yeah. I like that. I don't see a lot that you gain out of playing.
Do you put him out there? Somebody asked Eberflus about his record chase, and he said, yeah, we do think of that, but it's not the most important thing. Do you put him out there till he gets 65 rushing yards and breaks Lamar Jackson's record, and then pull him? Or is that not even worth it, Kyle?
I mean, I could see that scenario unfolding. I mean,
I could see that too. I
don't think that it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. I guess it depends on the culture of your locker room right now. Like, do you need that to rally around something like that? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes that helps. Like a leader like Justin Fields getting that record, like his teammates, because that's not just Justin Fields doing it himself. That is a team record. That is honestly a
team record.
Yeah. So like
that says a lot about your O-line and your wide receivers blocking downfield and stuff like that.
And maybe over the last couple of weeks with the way things have gone, you decide it's worth having him get that record because you feel the need for positive vibes going in the offseason. I don't think that's the case with this team. I think they understand what they are, but maybe.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question, and we should get some more clarity on it today. We're supposed to hear from Flus and from Justin Fields.
Yeah. So Mike B checking in. These guys are professionals. If you're healthy, you should play. I also don't think Fields is healthy with shoulder, ankle, and hip.
Well, yeah, that's fair to question that.
Yeah. Brandon Lawson. Brandon, I'm not sure not sure if you're a new one, but Brandon, nice to have you, buddy. Tevin Jenkins is our pulse. Then when you have zero anger or emotion with below average talent, Justin Fields stands zero chance, even with stacked wide receivers. I'll tell you what, I'll take immense talent over emotion, but I do get kind of what you're saying there.
I mean, Tevin Jenkins is on the football field anyway. He is kind of the pulse of the team. He does give them that bit of nasty that they need on the offensive line, and I think that you kind of feel that when he's not out there. I don't know, I don't know that Michael Schofield gives you the same vibes. Not that he's a bad player. It's just Tevin's got that little bit of nasty, and unfortunately, Schofield suffered an injury in that game too, and so you were down to your third option at right guard with Dieter Iselin.
Triple R, I know it might have been Mike B earlier had said about talking about Tevin's health. I don't think Tevin is a lock. His health history doesn't bode well moving forward. Triple R says, yeah, we are quickly reaching that point, which, I mean, Tevin Jenkins is going to be a starter for the Bears next year, probably at right guard again. The upside, what he's shown this year is too high to, cut bait now. But there's certainly over the last couple of years, there are very, very real concerns that he's not going to be able to make it through an NFL season.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen even just this year, he's dealt with several different things. There was a hip injury a little while ago, and I don't know. We still don't really know if the back injury at the start of training camp was real or not. But there's something to be said about availability, and that kind of goes back to where we started with Braxton Jones. Like he's the only guy who's played every single snap. Braxton Jones at left tackle, and that says something. That's an important part of being an offensive lineman. We saw that with Charles Leno too. Was he the best offensive lineman? No. Was he the best left tackle? No. But he played every single snap, and that is valuable at this level.
Yeah. Consistency among your offensive line is one of the most important aspects of football, no matter what level you're at. You just really, really need that consistency to I almost said grow the football. Almost pulled out a Tressman there. Habit. I like to make that joke occasionally. So I'm going to go all the way back to the top and dive into Mike's question because it's a good way to kind of go through it here. Actually, before I do that, Gary had been asking about Ja'Tyre Carter and the possibility of seeing him at guard this week. I can't find the question, Gary, but I know you've been asking about it. Sean, do you think we see someone like Carter get into the lineup this week?
Well, I think it doesn't bode well for Carter that Dieter Iceland is playing that right guard spot last week, and he was playing a week before that in the Bills game when the Bears needed some snaps.
Is Carter injured?
No. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. He was injured this last game. Yes, he had a back injury. He had not been injured all season until this week.
Okay, so something probably happened during practice.
Something probably happened during practice. Yeah, you know what? Thank you for reminding me of that. He did have something going on last week, but he has been healthy most of the year, and he's really only played a couple snaps on special teams. We haven't seen him on the offensive side. But at this point, I don't really expect to see him this week.
No, I don't either. Mike B says Carter and Leatherwood have to be awful if Peter Iselson is playing over them. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I think the question is how much has, they say all these guys work at all these positions, but how much has Leatherwood actually been spending time at guard versus at tackle? We don't really know. They can say that they train all these guys at all these spots, but if they're not comfortable with him there, they're not going to put him there. But I don't know that.
So I'm going to throw this back up. Mike B, like Carter, I want to say like he has to be awful. He's a practice squad guy. He was a project to begin with. But yeah,
sixth round pick from a small school. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike B followed up with Leatherwood with a healthy scratch. Yeah, that is a concern.
I mean,
it's not like the Bears gave up much for Alex Leatherwood. I was hoping something would come out of that, but I think that the Bears have kind of gone ahead and moved on from that.
Do you think they will keep him on the roster next year, Kyle?
No, I don't.
Interesting.
I just, if they had any confidence in him whatsoever, I think we would have seen him having an extended look at this. Now, maybe they're saying, okay, give us an entire offseason to work with him.
Yeah.
But I just, considering his pedigree, I think they would have wanted to see him in game action if they thought he was anywhere near ready to be able to help an NFL team.
I could see them keeping him, over the offseason. And I mean, maybe you're onto something. Maybe he winds up being a 53-man deadline cut next August after training camp. Certainly at that point, you'll have had a year to see what he's got.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, Sean, that they keep him until the end of training camp or to that cut down deadline. So Mike had asked this question, It's a good place to go with it here. Give it about 10 more minutes, Sean. That okay? And then we'll
Yeah.
jump off here.
Yeah.
We got a late start, so no, you got to get over to House. So, okay, so Mike had said, and this is a good place to kind of end our discussion today, guys. Like I said, we'll be back here hopefully on Friday morning. How many players that Ryan Poles acquired are you excited for, legitimately want to see on the team? And Mike had said, I very, very liberally got to 6, but really it's 4. I'm going to scroll all the way back down because I'm sure people are going to start coming with the question and they're chiming in here with their own thoughts. Sean, I'll start with you. Well, who do you think? What comes to mind immediately?
Well, immediately coming to mind is Kyler Gordon, of course, and Jaquan Brisker.
Yeah.
Those are two of the guys that you got to throw in that.
I mean, Jack Sanborn, undrafted free agent, but
I'm sorry, and we're talking about anyone that Poles brought in this year.
I think anyone, Mike. If that's not what I was reading it as pretty much anyone that the Bears brought in just this season.
I would throw Chase Claypool into that mix.
Let's see. Brandon chimes in with Trenton Gill, Sanborn, Jones. I'm not sure if you're referring to Velus Jones, maybe Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones actually has shown a little bit. Brisker, Gordon, Claypool, maybe. That's funny. You get the Claypool. Yeah, it's.
I would on my list. Claypool's definitely on there.
Yeah,
I don't know how other people feel, but yes, I have not seen enough. He just with the injury and getting to learn the offense. I'm willing to give that some more time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you gave up a second round pick. I really, really liked Claypool coming out of Notre Dame. The way he started in Pittsburgh makes me think that the talent is legit. I will say I was concerned with the way things progressed on Sunday. Him going to the sideline and slamming down a helmet. Like, I think he only played, was it 12 snaps in that game?
Yeah, it wasn't very many. And they said afterwards that he was on a pitch count with the knee. And I think I wouldn't say he slammed down his helmet. I watched that happen. I don't know if the cameras caught it on the TV broadcast, but it was more of like a helmet toss.
Kind of like a frustration.
It was a frustration toss. It wasn't vicious or anything like that. He just kind of tossed it and was clearly frustrated.
Yeah, and that's where it's a hard. I feel like you have to almost give it an incomplete with Chase Claypool because when he came in, they ramped him up, learning the playbook behind a passing offense that is legitimately, if not the worst in the NFL, one of the worst in the NFL. Then he goes out with the knee injury, misses a couple weeks. I don't know. I mean, I know they have injury issues at wide receiver, particularly this past week. But like if Chase Claypool's knee is in such bad shape that you have to limit him to 10 to 15 snaps, why is Chase Claypool even out there then?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And maybe it's because of the state of your wide receiver position, but certainly you would rather see him, if he's going to play the game, what are we doing here with playing 10, 12 snaps, whatever it is, because I don't know that that's really even worth it.
Brandon Lawson saying Claypool with 1 year of Tyke Tolbert. I would love to see it. So I'm not saying, don't misconstrue this as me saying like there should be changes on the coaching staff. Again, bad roster, first year. But one thing I will say about like, I guess I don't understand like why you would feel super confident like that Tyke Tolbert is going to unleash or unlock Chase Claypool, because yeah, these guys had limited upside, this wide receiver core coming in this season, but is there anyone that the Bears have in this wide receiver core that you feel Tyke Tolbert has made better this year? And I know that's hard to tell, like I said, with a bad roster, but like,
yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, we haven't seen anybody. There's no receiver on this team that really progressed throughout the season. There's nobody that went from sort of an unknown to a guy who's playing consistent come week 17, week 18. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
Velus Jones would have been one of the candidates for that, but that obviously hasn't happened.
yeah, you look at Velus Jones, you mentioned there, a rookie that you spent a mid-round pick on. You brought in Byron Pringle, you brought in Equanimous St. Brown, you brought in Dante Pettis. None of those guys have really made an impact, a significant impact. EQ, I think, by far the most. You got N'Keal Harry, a former first round pick. N'Keal Harry, right before the beginning of the year, has not really made an impact. Chase Claypool, who you gave up a second rounder for, has not made an impact. There unfortunately has at that position. While we've seen progress at a lot of different position groups, wide receiver has really stagnated.
Yeah, it has. It has. And Kyle, I just kind of flipped through the roster here to go back to the original question. And
Yeah.
um, here's my list. I got Brisker, Gordon, Sanborn, Claypool. I'm going to throw Braxton Jones into that. And then, those are like the solid five who I'm like, yeah, I want to see more from these guys. And I'm going to throw some names out here. And now some of these guys are going to still be on the team. I don't necessarily think you should give up on a Velus Jones, but Velus Jones. I think a lot of people. There's a lot of Joneses on this team. I think a lot of people in the chat were talking about Justin Jones, unless they were talking about other Joneses. Like where do we stand on N'Keal Harry, a guy you just mentioned, or Lucas Patrick, who has spent much of the year injured? Like where do you feel? How do you feel about those guys?
I'm interested to see what the chat says here. Me personally, I was not a huge fan of Lucas Patrick signing to begin with. There was nothing that I've seen that says that you need to bring him back.
The sole number one biggest positive of him is the leadership qualities.
Yeah.
On the field, it wasn't really doing it for me.
No, I mean, you have the cap space. Like if you want to have a veteran guy that can play multiple positions, he can come back. You can bring him back. If Lucas Patrick is penciled in at a starting spot on your offensive line next year, I'd be really concerned. Unless you've upgraded like both tackle positions and Tevin Jenkins is like, you can maybe get by with Lucas Patrick if everything else is strong around him, or above average around him. I don't see a lot there. Velus Jones, yeah, he's going to be around. Someone had mentioned Nicholas Morrow. He's a guy that the Bears signed.
I'd throw him in this same pool of players here.
Yeah, I think Nicholas Morrow has a spot on this roster moving forward. It's really hard, I guess, to judge. Rick had said, pop in here. Rick says, I'm more worried about polls now than I was at the start of the season. Kind of chiming in with the conversation I've had with Mike B off the air, and a little bit even when we've been on this podcast quite a bit about his concerns over Ryan Poles. I get it. I certainly do. This first class, whether it's through the draft or free agency, I think at best you can say is underwhelming, Sean.
Yeah. And you're at a disadvantage when you don't have a first round pick, but I agree. It's been underwhelming a little bit, and there's going to be hits and misses every year. But certainly you would have wanted to have a few more guys who you feel confident about moving forward. The good thing is that Brisker and Gordon seem to be on that right track. But I'm still not, I really think you got to give Ryan Poles another offseason before you really start to judge what he's judged the body of work.
Yeah, I mean, by the time, I'm going to be judging him.
I mean, we're going to judge him every step of the way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I'm not going to jump to a conclusion about Ryan Poles' future as Bears GM based on this first year, but I do think that, and I know we've been getting questions about the draft and free agency. I've started to dig into draft stuff a bit more. I haven't even looked at free agency yet. But by the time free agency hits, I'll have a pretty good idea of where I think the Bears should go and then into the draft. And you know what? I will be pretty critical if they don't take a path that I think is reasonable. And it could be that I'm just flat out wrong. And maybe I think Ryan Poles is an idiot, then they come out next year and win 12 games or something like that. But I definitely think that Ryan Poles needs to have a good offseason. I think he needs to have, maybe need is a strong word even. I think it would be helpful to have a splashy offseason. But when I say splashy, that can bite you in the ass pretty quickly. Like, they got to be smart about how they do this. But like, there's got to be something that serves as a catalyst, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, they can afford to spend a little bit here and there. I've been saying it the whole time. I don't expect them to spend all that cap space, but you can certainly spend a little bit. You can go out there and have a little bit of fun. And if that's kind of what you mean, Kyle, I'm with you. Like, they clearly need to make some major adjustments with this team. And maybe one or two splash signings would certainly get you feeling better about where this is going.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got to get out of here. I want to throw one last thing up here.
I'm going to throw one more name out there too. A guy who
Yeah.
we've probably forgotten about and haven't seen in months is Doug Kramer, the center who was drafted and was getting some run with the first team offense in training camp before he suffered an injury. I'll throw him on that list of guys I'm intrigued about going into next year.
You're just going with the U of I guy. That's all that is. Just
Get a shout out to the Illini.
I wanted to throw this one last thing before we get out of here, because it is something I want to talk about. And Brandon had said, I feel it's so hard to judge with O-line troubles. I'll disagree there. I don't think it's hard to judge. Brandon, this offensive line kind of stinks, man. Particularly with the injuries right now. But I also look at the tendency, or I look at the play calls and route trees sometimes, and a 90% run tendency on second down, and it just leaves me lost. And it's actually that last part that I wanted to hit on here. I'm not sure it's quite 90%.
That's an exaggeration, but it's over 50.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. He might not be that far off though. I do think I feel like I saw like 80%, or it's certainly very, very high. I'll be very, very irritated watching the Bears next year. And when I say irritated, I do that with any NFL team that consistently, or what I feel to be at a too high a rate on second and long situations. We've talked about this a bit before, but yeah, I don't know exactly what is causing that, but it does need to stop next year.
Yeah, I'd like to see I'd like to see the offense and Luke Getsy, get a little more creative in those situations where you're facing 2nd and 10 or 2nd and long or whatever. I think that's something that they could learn from, this season. I also do go back. We've talked about this in previous episodes, but is that a Luke Getsy thing, or is that sort of a Matt Eberflus being conservative as the head coach? Is that coming from the head coach? Who exactly is making those decisions to run in that situation? And I do tend to wonder about that.
I'd like to see the breakdown in second and long pass to run ratios over, let's say, like weeks 8 to 12, and then like weeks 13 through 16 or 14 through 17. And see how those compare, to see if maybe it's becoming more conservative because of trying to protect Justin Fields, or
and the lack
of weapons,
receivers, and injuries on the O-line. That's a really good point, Kyle. Those things may have fluctuated throughout the season.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and get out of here. Sean, you got to get over to Hallis Hall. We'll be back with you guys a little later this week to break down one final game for the 2018. What year is it?
What?
I just, for some reason, I saw 2018 and just came out of my mouth. I do that occasionally. Of the 2022 season. 2018 was a fun year, though. The last time
that's true. You got winning on your mind. You got
I'm trying to be positive. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get out of here, Sean. For Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. Thank you for listening to Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. We are live, like I said, twice a week. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify, anywhere you get your podcast. Get yourself a subscription, notification set up on YouTube. Stay with us here. With that, go ahead and get out of here. Once again, for Sean Hammond, I am Kyle Nabors. Talk to you guys later this week.